There's no doubt about it, the Peak District is an epic location full of interesting and challenging riding, and it's somewhere I love to explore. So today I want to show you 3 of my favourite Peak District descents. Now, your definition of the best mountain bike trail may differ to mine depending on your preferred type of riding, your equipment and your ability. So if your favourite trail doesn't show up in this video, why not drop it down in the comments and perhaps I'll give it a go. So when I say Peak District descents, you instantly start thinking of classic trail options such as Cutgate, Lady Cannings or Stanage Edge, but there are so many amazing trails to choose from, it's hard to narrow it down to just 3. So which trails made my list? Well, we'll start with an easy one. First on the list is the Devil's Elbow. A relatively well-known and well-established part of the Peak District mountain bike scene, this is a rocky and interesting trail with plenty to rave about. Dropping straight in, after you pedal from the car park and flow your way along the top of the trail, you drop into the first leg of the descent. Essentially an L shape, the Devil's Elbow doesn't disappoint. At around 5 minutes long, depending on your riding, this is a decent descent. This is by far the shortest of the 3 trails I'm going to show you today, but parts of this trail will really get you thinking and working hard too. This upper part is a pretty nice piece of riding. It's fast and flows well, but don't switch off just yet. This is merely a warm-up for what's to come in a minute.
Oh, look at this!
Maintained by Ride Sheffield, this bridleway is a varied and interesting descent with many different line options. As I said, the top section flows well, but it has a healthy dash of sketchiness towards the end. But it's after you turn the corner where the fun really starts. Heading down the second section, the rock comes out in force and the excitement levels ramp up a notch. Hopefully it will be easy to see why this trail has made my list. The terrain is interesting, varied, and it keeps you guessing at what's coming next. I love all the different line choices that you can take. You could ride this trail a few times and hardly use any of the same lines. But it's an involved trail and you have to keep your eyes forward as you weave the bike around. There are definitely a few spicier sections on here, so it's good to make sure you're wearing all the protective kit for this one. With a bit of speed, this trail really comes alive. There's never a dull moment. When you ride a trail like this blind for the first time, you get the amazing sense of anticipation of what could be coming around the next corner. In this case, you can almost guarantee that it's going to be more rocks, you just don't know how many or how big they're going to be. And I find this kind of riding way better than anything you'll get at a trail centre. Not that I don't like trail centres, but I find the ever-changing unknown of these sorts of trails extremely rewarding to ride. So, depending on your speed, you can make this trail as hard or as easy as you want. And even though I'm on a bike with plenty of suspension today, I've seen people on hardtails ride this with no problems. You're just going to have to work a wee bit harder. As you can see, the weather was great when I rode this a few months back. The sun is shining and it's nice and dry, which means no slippery wet rocks or roots. The rock here is actually pretty grippy, which means that you can play around with your line choice a bit and be more confident hopping or rolling features. This definitely added to the fun of the trail. However, I have also ridden this in the winter and, to be honest, it's still just as fun. So, as I approach the later stages of this trail, things flatten out a bit and the smoother flow trail returns. All in all, a great trail and well worth a visit. Not bad for my first pick of the Peak District trails.
That was great.
Now, the second trail on my list is Jacob's Ladder. This is a Peak District classic and almost a rite of passage for any mountain biker. I went to ride this trail earlier in the year because I was told about the good riding and the even better views. Well, I can't say much for the views today, so let's hope the riding makes up for it. Jacob's Ladder can be combined into a longer route around the Peak District, but it's well worth including into any route planning. But be warned, it's very popular with walkers in the summer, so please be courteous and stick to the bridleways. With an early start and some questionable weather, I didn't really have to worry about hikers today. Starting at the top of a foggy hill, you twist your way down the rock slabs until you make it onto the wider path. The route itself is a combination of being mostly natural and some cobbled sections. As you can imagine, these are subjected to plenty of harsh weather like any good mountain descent. But this means that loose rocks, drainage ruts and the occasional section that's turned into a river are all par for the course. This also means that the trail features will change slightly every time you go down it, making the trail very unpredictable. As you'll see, trails like this are absolutely filled with loose rock that loves to skip around underneath your tyres. You never quite know if you can trust a rock to be stable or not. Especially in conditions like this, when you're practically riding in a stream, you need to be focused on what you're doing. Luckily for me, the visibility was so poor today that there was no chance of being distracted by the views. I really love riding trails like this. I mean, just check out this terrain. It's all over the shop. How often do you get to ride something as interesting and unpredictable as this? But it's important to remember that although you're allowed to ride trails like this, they're not designed for riders in the same way that trail centre descents are. Here, there are features that can easily catch you out and send you crashing to the floor if you're not looking where you're going.
Oh, look at this.
Here, the trail spreads out into a number of different line choices, and it's all quite worn away. There are certainly a few sketchy sections around, so I recommend keeping your wits about you.
Oh, yeah.
At this point, you turn right to continue down the bridleway. The top part has places where it flows quite well, but of course, it has its fair share of ruts that try and trip you up too. And of course, lots of these ruts are filled with loose rocks. As well as the rocks, today this top section is also really windy and a tad exposed down to the left. And this is worth noting, because unlike a trail centre, riding out in the wild can be a bit more weather dependent. For me, this type of riding has the perfect balance of adventure, technical challenge and fun. I can see why it's so popular with riders. The rocks, ruts and line choices combined with the location are all right up my alley. As someone who began riding in North Wales, this type of terrain is where I feel at home. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with a lovely flow trail, but making the trip to ride somewhere like this is why I love being on a mountain bike. Making the last left turn, this walled off section is your last blast down to the end. Now, it may look like a straight line, but in fact it's a treacherous gauntlet of loose rocks and shale. This is a constant challenge all the way to the end, with some surprises thrown in for good measure. Again, it's difficult to know which rocks are going to move and which ones are actually attached to the ground, so you have to pick your line carefully and just hang on tight. So even in today's conditions, the challenging nature of this trail and the pure enjoyment you get from riding it still shine through. With the excitement and technical nature of this trail, I can definitely see why it comes so highly recommended. On long mountain bike rides, there's usually a lot of climbing to be done, but this is a descent worth climbing for. And with that, we're at the end.
Awesome.
But I still have one more trail to show you, and if rocks are your thing, you're gonna love this next one. Because this trail is like no other. This is Cavedale and it's graded black. If Jacob's Ladder is a rite of passage, this is a baptism of fire. This route is long, picturesque, and completely bonkers. Cavedale starts in a rather flat and unassuming field, a complete contrast to how it ends up. I've only ridden this trail once and I have no idea what I was getting myself into. As you make your way across the first couple of fields, the riding is pretty smooth. By the time you get to the more established path, you're flowing nicely. Following the bridleway down, the scenery slowly gets more and more interesting. It may not look like it now, but this is actually one of the most visually stunning trails I've ever ridden, although you're going to have your eyes glued to the trail for the most part. Slowly but surely the track starts to become more involved and a fair bit rougher.
Oh, that is rocky.
This is a bit more like what I was expecting. Just like the Devil's Elbow, there are different lines you can take, except this is a lot more rowdy. At this stage, you don't really have to worry about line choice as such, because they're all pretty similar, and the trail is just more bumpy rather than overly technical. But it's a stark contrast to the flat grassy field that we started in. But as I rode, I still found myself wanting something a little bit more challenging to ride. A few more rocks and a couple more difficult features would really improve things. And as it turns out, you should be careful what you wish for. And when I got to this gate, I realised that my wish had been granted, big time.
Oh my god, look at this. This is loose and really rocky, and yep, it's wet.
This is where things really start to get interesting, because from here all the way down to the valley is almost one huge great boulder field, combined with a stream. Now, I've ridden my fair share of loose rocks before, but this trail is something else. Usually I say that speed is your friend when riding over rocks and boulders, but this terrain is harsh and I found it really difficult to get my speed up and stay on my chosen line. The majority of these rocks are loose, which means that they're rolling around and throwing your bike left and right as you ride over them. Really tricky when both wheels are going in a different direction. Even harder than this is trying to pick a safe line through, which is pretty much pot luck. Because of the moving rocks, this trail has its own idea of where it wants to take your bike.
This route is a killer. Oh.
As much as I was getting used to riding the loose rocks and rock features, one thing I was not prepared for were the deep patches of loose pebbles and shale. As soon as your tyre hits the shale, you have no control. Like this. You have no steering or braking. But I've emerged victorious into the wide valley below. Amazing. Down here you really get a view of how awesome the landscape is. It's like riding through a film set. So hopefully it's obvious why this trail made it into my top 3 Peak District descents. It's a unique challenge to say the least. But once you've made it down here, you're past the worst of it and you can cruise through the valley, taking in the scenery until you pop out in the village below. So there you have it, 3 absolutely cracking Peak District descents. But this is by no means an exhaustive list, and I'm only really scratching the surface of what's out here. So if you have any other amazing recommendations, leave them in the comment section below, I'd love to hear them. But for now, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel for more awesome content, and I'll see you down in the comments.